On April 23, 2006, the Kyiv Police Department in Ukraine was contacted regarding a man who was acting very confused. When the police arrived to assist the man, they noted that he appeared to be in his mid-20s and seemed scared and disorientated. He was wearing an old-fashioned suit jacket and flat cap, and he was carrying a film camera around his neck. The police asked for the man's ID, which turned out to be a Soviet ID. This wouldn't be completely unexpected if the man was middle-aged or older, since Ukraine used to be a part of the Soviet Union until it dissolved many years previously. However, the man looked far too young to have this type of ID. The police were understandably confused. But what they didn't know yet was that they may have just stumbled upon a real time traveler. The ID revealed that the man's name was Sergei Ponomarenko, and that his birthday was in 1932. This couldn't make sense, since that would make him 74 years old in 2006. However, his ID stated that he was 25 years old, and even stranger, his photo matched his physical appearance. This was consistent with the age of the ID, however, since it was found later to be a type of ID issued in the 1950s. The police decided to ask Sergei what day he thought it was, to which he replied without hesitation, April 23rd, 1958. After this response, the police understandably felt out of their depth and took Ponomarenko to a psych ward for further evaluation. Ponomarenko was placed under the care of Dr. Pavlo Kutrikov. Dr. Kutrikov decided to go along with what Ponomarenko was saying to try and understand his point of view regarding how he ended up in 2006. The doctor recorded Sergei's response, which states, "It was daytime, and I wanted to go for a walk in the city. I took my camera, but when I left my house, I saw a strange object that had a bell shape, and it was very strange, and it was flying in a strange way. It is difficult to explain what I was seeing. It might be better to look at the photos from my camera." Sergei then gave the camera he had been carrying to the doctor, who was himself an amateur photographer. The doctor immediately noticed that the camera was an old Yashica Flex, which could be quite rare in 2006. Stranger still was the film found in the camera, which was a type of 120mm film that hadn't been produced since the 1970s. This made it difficult to develop, so Dr. Kutrikov called in a photography expert named Vadim Poizner to develop the film. The first thing Vadim realized when he removed the film was that it was manufactured in 1956. However, the film was in perfect condition. This is strange because analog film works by exposing a set of chemicals to light. These chemicals expire over time gradually, to the point that they would be noticeably off after only a couple of years after production. Once the photos were developed, they showed images of Kyiv during what appeared to be the 1950s. They contained 50s-era cars and clothing, as well as buildings which didn't exist anymore. Whilst this was still within the possibility that these were just old photographs taken by somebody else in the 50s, this fitting explanation was quickly demolished when Vadim noticed that some of the images showed Sergei and his girlfriend at the time posing among some of these past locations. It should also be noted that in these photos, Sergei was wearing the exact same clothes that he was found in. When they looked at the final photo on the reel, just as Sergei reported, it contained what looked like a dark, bell-shaped object floating in the sky. When the doctor asked Sergei about the photo, he said, "Now you are convinced that I am telling the truth. I so far do not understand what this object is and how something like that happened to me at the same moment when I took the picture, and I went down to look at the camera and somehow I showed up in this year." That night, Sergei went back to his room to retire. When the doctors went to check on him in the morning, he was missing. Checking the security footage revealed that he went to his room and closed the door, but it never filmed him leaving. Sergei was never seen again. The bars on the windows meant that the only way out of the room was by exiting through the door. His disappearance was a complete mystery.
Меня зовут Пономаренко Сергей. Родился в Киеве 17 июня 1932 года.
After Sergei disappeared, the police identified a man who was 25 in 1958 and had the same name as Sergei Ponomarenko. The record showed he was declared missing in Kyiv in 1960, 2 years after the date Sergei said he originated from. The police were able to track down a woman who was the girlfriend of the Sergei who disappeared in 1960, and luckily, she was still alive at over 70 years old. The police managed to arrange an interview with this woman, who was called Valentina Krish. She identified herself and Sergei from the photographs, confirming that these two Sergeis were the same person. She also told the investigators that Sergei had disappeared on April the 23rd, 1958, but that he resurfaced just a few days later. The amount of time he was missing was the same as the length of time he was present in 2006. When the police asked about what happened to Sergei, Valentina said that he disappeared again in the 1970s, but this time he never returned home. However, she did receive a photograph in the post a few years later which depicted an older-looking Sergei stood in front of a city which resembled Kyiv, but looked far too advanced. The photo had a note on it stating that it was taken in 2050 and that Sergei would be back soon. However, for unknown reasons, this never happened. And I'm afraid that's it. There was never any new information regarding this story. Since 2006, the story of Sergei Ponomarenko has become an urban legend and is remembered as the most compelling case of a time traveler we've ever seen.
It's a kind of a weak way to put something which is so obvious and deep as the difference between the past and the future. Our very experiences inside are completely different for past and future. We remember the past, we don't remember the future.
Suppose this is all true, and Sergei really did time travel. Can we explain any of this? Does it have any scientific backing? Well, yes and no. Travelling forward in time is actually a well-understood concept and has been for the last 100 years, thanks to Albert Einstein's theory of relativity. Einstein showed that time isn't constant. It can speed up or slow down based on factors like speed and gravity. Essentially, if you go really fast, you age slower than those going slower than you. This phenomenon is called time dilation. It's possible that whatever the bell-shaped object was could have been some extraterrestrial craft capable of transporting Sergei across the galaxy at speeds near the speed of light in an instant, causing him to be unaware of the many decades passing by in less than a second. The real issue, however, is the implication that he travelled back in time to 1958. As far as relativity has shown, it is likely impossible to travel back in time. So, from our understanding of the universe, this story cannot be true. However, it is possible that there could be some way of reversing time that we are currently unaware of. There is one aspect of this story that I haven't mentioned yet that could spell the end for this mystifying case. You can find this story repeated and reported on all over the internet. However, the earliest known mention of Sergei Ponomarenko and the time-travelling story comes from a Ukrainian TV show called Aliens, which aired in 2012 on a TV channel called 1+1. The show had 10 episodes in total, and the episode which reported this story was episode 3, titled Time Traveller. In fact, all of the footage and images that have been shown so far depicting any lifelike aspects of the story originate from this one episode. Looking at the other episodes, it's clear that the show was focused on shedding light on the paranormal. The episode about Sergei contains a disclaimer at the start which translates to, "The Aliens series aims to restore scenes of controversial topics. Any theory and hypothesis proposed cannot be considered to be correct, and further scientific research is required. All scene restorations are based on statements of witnesses. There is no conclusive evidence to prove the existence of aliens. Your opinion on this issue is up to you." So, while the show isn't a documentary, so to speak, it also isn't claiming to be one. It isn't saying it's fictional or factual, but rather somewhere in the middle. The footage of Sergei and the images from his camera are clearly reproductions. For example, the ID card from the show has the seal of the Communist Youth League stamped on it. However, this wasn't the correct stamp for the time period. Another glaring issue is that the security footage is dated as Wednesday the 23rd of April 2006. However, in reality, this date fell on a Sunday. Even the image of Sergei from 2050 seems to contain a building which has a striking resemblance to a quite famous skyscraper in New York. However, none of this is evidence that the story is fictional, since it was stated that the scenes were restorations and not the original copies. But this fact points out a glaring problem with this story. If these documents and photographs are all based on real evidence, then where is this evidence? Despite all the talk about this story across the internet, I have not been able to find even one piece of original evidence. This could be due to a language barrier, as I can't read or write in Ukrainian, but after all these years, I would assume that a tale as captivating as this would cause somebody who could speak English and Ukrainian to post evidence on English-speaking forums at some point. Yet, I haven't been able to find anything. Similarly, I couldn't find anything about any of the people named in the show. So what are we to make of all of this? If we consider the TV show's disclaimer, emphasizing the speculative nature of its content and the need for further scientific research, we are prompted to approach the tale with caution. The recreated scenes and inconsistencies, such as inaccuracies in dates and details, raise questions about the authenticity of the story. While urban legends and stories of time travel capture our imaginations, it's crucial to distinguish between the speculative and the substantiated. The Sergei Ponomarenko case, intriguing as it may be, leans toward the former. Until concrete evidence emerges or additional research sheds light on the matter, the mystery of Sergei Ponomarenko's supposed time travel remains a captivating, albeit unproven, narrative. But who knows? Maybe a man with a flat cap and an old film camera really did break free from the grip that time has on our lives. I think deep down, we all wish we could be a little bit more like Sergei Ponomarenko.